This is from the book, the Mormons by David Fitzgerald.
Yeah, so it looks like he's quoting Willard Chase, but from what I can find, Willard Chase was never a church member or a church leader. He was just some guy, just some dude from the 19th century. So you can find a number of quotes about Joseph Smith and his visions from other people at the time, just people who were living in Palmyra. But, that's just sort of just some people, right? So if you're you want to figure out what Joseph actually claimed, or even what his immediate acquaintances claimed, you would probably go to the 3 or 8 witnesses. But Willard Chase, if he's commenting on the first vision, he seems to be giving the events of the gold plates vision, which are different visions. So yeah, I don't really know what to say besides this is just some dude and he seems to be mixing up his stories.
Well, it might be Willard Chase that's mixing up the stories, but I've followed the references that David Fitzgerald is using here, and it definitely goes back to this is recorded as a first vision account.
And David Fitzgerald, he's the hysterical Jesus guy, right? I haven't read his book. I've never heard of any books he's written on our church. I would recommend Richard Bushman. His book is called Rough Stone Rolling. It's considered among Mormons and non-Mormon academics like the best book you could ever find about Joseph Smith's life. This Willard account just seems to be mixing up the stories here.
If it is a mix-up, then it's a mix-up on Willard Chase's part and not a mix-up on my source.
It seems to be Willard Chase was probably asked, what do you know about Joseph Smith and the visions? And he was like, oh yeah, there's the gold plates. And that's probably, he was referencing that. And they seem to be asking about the first vision, and he sort of conflated them. And then it looks like David Fitzgerald found the quote from the 19th century and put it in the book. So, and that actually happens quite a bit. Mormon history is really hard to recount, especially because in the 1980s, we had a guy named Mark Hoffman, and Mark Hoffman was a member of the church who left the church, and he was known as one of the best fraudsters in American history. He was like creating documents that were purported to be from the founding fathers, and he was tricking academics at Ivy League schools. He ended up creating a couple documents. One is called the Salamander Letter. The other is called the Anthon Transcript. He made up some fake documents that were purported to be from early church history. And people believed it, and some of the church leaders bought it, and he kept coming up with them. And so it was leading a lot of people out of the church because it made it seem like a lot of the Joseph Smith history was really, really far-fetched and insane. And he eventually found out he was lying and he was making them up, and he was going to go to prison. So there was so much mix-up of Mormon history at that time. We're still actually trying to figure out sometimes what's true and what's not, and what is a Hoffman forgery and what's not a Hoffman forgery, which is why there's like a gap in Mormon academia. There was 19th century onward, and then there was like this strange kerfuzzle in the 80s and 70s, or I think the 80s and 90s, and we kind of had to do a complete do-over of church history because we had embraced so many things that were Hoffman forgeries. Look up Mark Hoffman forgeries, and you'll see that you guys may have read some stuff that you thought was from Mormon history. It was actually a Hoffman forgery. And so it's important to keep in mind, because I've had some people reach out to me and say, what about this? And they go, yeah, it was a Hoffman forgery.
Okay. I mean, to be quite honest, the Latter-day Saint organization, they have no shortage of con men that use the religion in order to carry out their schemes.
So are you pulling most of this from David Fitzgerald's book?
Well, this is the book that I have on Mormon history. So, but I mean, like I said, he has references, to substantiate the things that he's saying. And
I looked up David Fitzgerald. He just kind of seems to be, not.
Nuts.
I don't see much academic praise for him. He kind of seems to be like an Amazon self-published kind of author.
No, he is not an Amazon self-published author. He goes through actual publishers. While his work isn't peer-reviewed or put through any kind of academic press, they're very well researched. But
yeah, so my personal opinion is, at least when it comes to church history or religious history or theology, I always try to go for Oxford, UNC Chapel Hill, like the things that are pretty peer reviewed and trustworthy. If it's not that, I usually kind of toss it away. And especially because he's quoting someone for the first vision, but is giving things from the Golden Plates accounts, I would probably just say it's an untrustworthy book.
Well, I mean, it's not that the book is untrustworthy. I mean, if that guy was mixing up the first vision, I mean, I followed the references for Fitzgerald in his book, and it leads directly to an Institute for Religious Research website where it says changing the first vision accounts, 1827 first vision accounts. So, I mean, his references check out. So well, it's not.
The IRR, Institutes for Religious Research, is actually just it's one guy. It's not actually an institute. It's not peered with any college or anything like that. It's just some dude. I've actually heard about the IRR quite a bit. They're really they're called a counter cult ministry. So they're a Christian website that spaces their time going against Mormons, Jehovah's Witnesses, and Seventh-day Adventists. But that's about it. It's really just like one dude's blog. It's not anything that's peer reviewed, like no important people are involved in it. It's just untrustworthy.
Well, I mean, to be honest, it's kind of hard to do like Mormon history in general, unless you're already part of the faith. I mean, that first account by Joseph Smith that he wrote in his own personal book, I mean, it was kept under lock and key for 130 years. And the only reason why it actually came to light was because they forgot about it. And somebody put it in their, I want to say it was like their dissertation or something. And they didn't realize that was being put out there, and they didn't even confirm it until they absolutely had to confirm it. Not to mention the fact that I've heard from several ex-Mormons that the Mormon church, as soon as you start investigating stuff that seems to be contradictory to the Mormon message, they end up getting excommunicated or fired, from being a Mormon historian. So, I mean, I would say that if you're looking for like peer-reviewed research, like scholarly historical research on this kind of stuff, maybe the Mormon church should kind of like open up, their documents and stuff and allow people to actually do the research that don't already agree with the position.
Going back to the trial, I'm not actually aware of a transcript of the trial. And that seems to be one of the reasons why we don't know much about it, because the record keeping of the trial wasn't good. So, like I said, like any sort of like Mormon history, it can be difficult, but not really that difficult. So I'm looking right here, Paul Reeves' book by Oxford University Press, Religion of a Different Color, tracing the history of race and Mormonism. I'm looking here at Harvard and Belknap's The Mormon Jesus by John G. Turner, Rough Stone Rolling, Vintage Press by Richard Bushman. So I'm looking at a lot of peer-reviewed Mormon books going through the history of Mormonism, and they've all kind of got the thumbs up from the academic sort of scholarly circles. So to say that Mormon history is bad because the church doesn't open up the books, about Joseph Smith's history itself, he published when he was alive in the Pearl of Great Price, Joseph Smith History, where he tells his experience with the first vision all the way with Moroni and everything like that. That's been publicly printed in all of our scriptures since Joseph Smith was alive. So I'm not sure what story you're referring to where someone found it and they had to come clean with it, but Joseph Smith by his own hand wrote that in, made sure it was a part of the scriptural canon when they were putting it on the printing presses, and let everybody read it. And that was this is one of the conversion tools they used, was Joseph Smith's own admission. So yeah, the first vision account, all that's been widely available publicly for everyone to read since he was alive. So I'm not quite sure what story you're referring to.
So David Fitzgerald has a actual document, documenting the trial, courtesy of the clerk of the Board of Supervisors, Chenango County Office Building, Norwich, New York. As far as I know, it was found there much later. So I mean, we didn't have any court records about it until this was found.
And you're talking about the transcript of the 1826 trial?
It just says court record. Court record of Joseph Smith's March 20th, 1826 trial for fraud, being a disorderly person and an imposter. And it notes how it says Joseph Smith, the glass looker, 1826, and then courtesy of, and it's the citation for where it was pulled from.
And are you looking at that transcript right now, or are you looking at the source for it?
Well, I mean, I'm looking at the copy of it in the book, but I'm sure that I could find it online. But I mean, I'll have to look after we talk here, and I can get back to you.
Oh yeah, so I think I see what you're looking at on josephsmithpapers.org. There doesn't seem to be any quoting of the individual's like dialogue back and forth. It doesn't seem to be a transcript in that way. It just seems to be a little summary of what happened, and that's about it. So again, like there's no going back to it. There's nothing you can pull from it that says, "Oh, well, Joseph admitted to being a con man." Or kind of, if you want to go after like go after Joseph Smith, there's much better things to choose from. People often, like I always say, if you want to like. If I ever went anti-Mormon and want to take down the church, I know where to hit the church. But a lot of people don't, and they go after like, just some of the stuff that's, it's just not the best stuff to really go after Joseph. If you wanted to go after him, the early stuff isn't where it is, honestly.
Okay, so where is it?
Well, of course, I'm not going to say. I just want to ask one more. About, because I know you're basing a lot of this off of Fitzgerald, and where does he teach?
He doesn't teach anywhere, but he also doesn't have to teach anywhere in order to write a book about history. I mean, he's got references in his book, like for instance with the court document. I mean, he had the actual court document in there,
right?
So
that court document doesn't really say anything suspicious. It just kind of gives a rundown of it, but there's no transcript in it. So I'm just kind of like, see, that's why even if I was to do something on like Islam, which I'm not a Muslim, right? I own a Quran, but that's about it. But if I wanted to get the best information on the history of Muhammad, I'd probably make sure it's based out of academic peer-reviewed circles coming from professors at respectable universities. But what I can find from Mr. Fitzgerald, respectfully, is that he really just seems to be some guy. He doesn't teach anywhere. He went to UC Fresno, and that's all his education is. There's no master's or PhD. Just kind of some guy who's published, and it doesn't go through any academic circle, and nothing's peer reviewed.
I've noticed that you do this a lot with people like that you engage with. Is one thing that you'll do is, since on Twitter, if you're interacting with somebody, what you'll do is you'll basically bring up their profile, take a screenshot of it, post it, and then you'll attempt to publicly shame them as an argument against whatever thing that they were talking to you about. And just like right now you're trying to do with David Fitzgerald, you're bringing up like these things that you think are embarrassing or would degrade the arguments that he's coming at you with, and you're attacking the person rather than attacking the arguments that I'm presenting. And I mean,
so I can see where you're coming from there. On Twitter, that's mostly like my if I feel like someone's trolling, I screenshot to see that they're following two people and just created the account to argue with me. And so I usually just send that, and I'm like, I'm not arguing with the troll, and I'll block them. That's the problem with non-peer reviewed academics. Just, you can't trust them. It's like, why would I read anything he says when I could read something from someone who's a little bit more esteemed,
So you're going to go with a genetic fallacy then in order to dismiss him?
Well, I've seen, look, we've brought up one thing, right? So we gave it a chance. It didn't seem to hold up to muster. So, what's the point? That's
Kwaku, what are your qualifications? Do you have a master's degree in what gives you authority, or are you just some guy on the internet? Why should people listen to you?
Right. So, like I said, I'm just a YouTuber, and most of my videos include like GIFs and funny music. And my videos are for like middle schoolers and stuff. And so I've had a number of people say, hey, your videos are fun. They're for high schoolers, middle schoolers. And that's really all I would do. I don't claim to be an academic. I haven't written a book. I just make videos. And so because I make that claim of, hey, I'm just kind of a dude in college making fun videos, having a nice time. That's how people treat me. But if anyone was treating me like I was a scholar or academic and holding me up with these other academics, I would take issue with that.